Thank you for joining us from wherever you are watching. We are coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center, Nile Room. And today we'll be talking about local tourism. Or what other word did you say I should use?
Domestic tourism.
Domestic tourism. And well, just before we begin our conversation, actually I'll introduce my guest after that. But let's take a look at a clip that we put together earlier in the week. The last two episodes of this show have been about 1. Conserving nature, and 2. Investment opportunities in the tourism sector. You can find those online if you missed them. Now this week, we decided to keep it home. We asked on social media for people to share pictures of tourist locations they had visited within. There is such beauty about this country that you never see locked up in your office or running around the same place you're used to all year round. Many people think that tourism is the preserve of the rich, the corporates who get paid for vacations and chance wins, win a trip to this or that island or eco-lodge. But we found that there are those young, ordinary Ugandans who are so passionate about their country that they do whatever it takes to go out there and see Uganda. There are groups like the Mountain Slayers, Ondaba, Koi Koi, Take a Break, Travel Maniacs Uganda, Pal Guide Uganda, and others. And then there are those individuals like Gerald, who I met in Arua.
My name is Gerald Iga. I'm a graduate teacher of economics and mathematics from Makerere University. That's my qualification, but what I do is quite different. Because of my interest in business, I moved from Kampala, where I grew up, to Arua in 2012, having seen the potential that this town has for growth, given its very convenient location between the South Sudan and DR Congo borders. And in the first 2 years of being here and moving around, I was really struck by the great potential that the region has for tourism. And as a result, I started to talk on my social media about some of these places like Mount Wati, Mriadua Falls, Mount Ote by the Nile, and others. And with the encouragement of people like Amos Wekesa, I started to organize trips as a local guide for locals and eventually foreigners to go see some of these places. Of course, West Nile's tourism is largely unexploited compared to, say, the southwestern part of the country. But I see a lot of opportunities. We only have to take charge of them. And so I think that more youth should consider moving to towns like Arua, Gulu, Mbale, or Mbarara to exploit opportunities that, given their skills and knowledge and networks that they have built while in Kampala, would be very easy for them to take advantage of. Thank you.
Gerald Iga, I met him on one of my visits to Arua. Well, tonight our conversation is really going to revolve around local tourism. I'll introduce my guests and we can begin our conversation. So right next to me is Andrew Abba Baguma. Andrew, who I will call Abba during this whole interaction, is a tourism and travel entrepreneur with high interest in promoting domestic plus inbound tourism. He's the proprietor of Green Afro Tours Limited and Abba Camp Limited, which offers camping rental care. A teetotaler since 2012 and thereby a voluntary counselor and speaker on alcoholism, drug abuse plus other addictions. He is also a Rotarian with Rotary Club of Chitante. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you, Joseph.
Josephine. Let's go with Josephine. Yes.
Josephine.
Okay.
I'm glad that you are talking about this topic on your program. Tourism is, I think, is a gem in this country. So
and not enough people are talking about it.
And not enough people are
So I forgive you for calling me Joseph. And well, next to you too, Abba, we have Herbert Opio, who is a visual artist who earns his keep in advertising and communications. He's an avid traveler and a lover of Uganda. He's also a member of a hiking group, Mountain Slayers, and a domestic tourism advocate group, Ondaba. Welcome, Herbert.
Thank you, Josephine.
Okay, and finally, Nabifo Amunga, who is a lawyer and social entrepreneur, charter president of Rotary Club of Mbale Metropolitan, owner of Sukali Bistro in Mbale, vice chair of Eastern Entrepreneurs. That's actually vice chair and co-founder, right?
Yes.
Of Eastern Entrepreneurs and Tourism Network in Eastern Uganda. Welcome, Nabifo.
Thank you for having me.
All right, well, let's start our conversation. Let's say it as it is. Welcome back. So we heard what Gerald said, and he was talking about more youth going back to their home district. So just going up country and doing the kind of thing that he does. How many people do we have who actually will go and live for example, in Rukunji or in Bale, okay, you're doing it. But how many people actually out there who appreciate where they're from and will go to actually promote it?
Well, I'm a living example of that, as you said, because I was living in South Africa for quite a number of years, as well as other countries. And I just moved back I came to Uganda on holiday after staying away for 2 years. And when I got back, I was just amazed at how Uganda had grown and all that. And I'd just been here 2 years prior on holiday as well. And I was blown away. And my mom is from Bali, but I considered it a village while I was younger. You know, why are you taking me to the village? I have no friends there. I don't know anybody. But when I went there was waterfalls, there were hiking opportunities, there was so much adventure-related things to do. And when I told my mom, like, where our house is, there's a waterfall directly opposite. She'd never noticed it, and she bought the property in 1980.
How could she never have noticed it?
I was telling her, did you know that you have such a beautiful view? And she was shocked. And this is the issue that we have with local tourism, because it's ours and we see it every day.
We take it for granted.
Yes, we take it for granted and we don't take notice of it. But I moved here, and then I stayed in Kampala for 2 years practicing law. And with going back to Mbale to do these tour-related activities, I ended up starting a backpackers in Mbale that has grown into a bistro that brings in both local and international tourists.
Oh, so are you people rich? Because we think that everybody who, because I know you move a lot, Habad.
Yes, I do.
And I know you move a lot as well, Abba.
Surely do.
So are you guys rich?
I would say it's not. I think it's the idea is you need to go to a certain place, and then you find willing people to go with you, and then you discuss the cost for it. And usually you get more people, the unit cost per person comes down. I'll give an example. 3 weeks ago, we were in Kisoro. We had gone to climb one of the ranges there. It is Sabinyo. And we were 57. Of those, about 50 were Ugandans. And it cost all of us 270,000 shillings.
That's in total or an individual?
Each. Individual, each.
Okay.
That covers the cost of the bus, the cost of fuel, where you're going to stay, the food, everything, excluding, of course, out of pocket. And this, we planned this trip, say, in December for the entire year. So you know that in 4 months or in 6 months, I would need 270,000 to go for a particular trip. So you save for it. So if you break it down over 6 months, it's not expensive.
So getting back to your question about whether tourism is for the rich, well, there's this wrong perception because...
Well, first of all, I'd like you to first answer if you're rich. You're both not really saying if you're rich or not.
We are rich at heart.
You're rich at heart.
Yes,
that's nice. You've said that. Okay, so yes.
Right. There's this perception that tourism is only for the international visitors, especially the Caucasians and people from the Western world. But in reality, tourism is everywhere. Anyone can be a tourist. And the best place to be a tourist is your own country because it becomes more affordable. And it involves, of course, travel. So in most cases, people only travel, but they don't tour. Because with tourism, you need to interact with nature. There has to be a specific destination. The traveler sees whatever they can find, but the tourist goes to see particularly something they want to see. And now getting back to what Herbert said, that most of these trips are affordable. And this is when I come in with the Abba camp, because you find upcountry, most of the, especially in the destinations, like in the national parks, the accommodation there is quite pricey for most Ugandans. So you find there are options, which we are coming up with, especially camping. Camping is a very affordable.
How much is a tent?
A tent, renting a tent is between 25.
Buying a tent?
Oh, buying a tent, it depends on the size.
Depends on the size of the tent.
Okay.
The size of the tent. Most of them, a single size tent for one adult is around 200,000, depending on the make. There are those from China, which can be cheaper.
So if I'm going to buy a tent,
yes,
which is about 200,000, and then I'm going to pay for a trip that's about 270,000.
yes.
That's not expensive?
Well,
The tent is a
indeed,
one-time cost.
It's a one-time cost.
which you
That's
can
your
use for
accommodations,
up to
okay.
5 years.
Going camping is just but one example of how you can be a tourist.
Okay.
Basically, if you're living in, let's say you live in Kampala, if you're to go to Mbale, you're visiting relatives or friends, you already have the potential to be a tourist. As long as you say, what is the nightlife like in Mbale? Then you're becoming a tourist.
Right.
If you say, let me go see Wanale, you're being a tourist. So it doesn't specifically mean that hiking and trailing, that is adventure tourism.
Yes.
But there's also city tourism where you just walk around and see and interact, or take long walks and check out the environment where you are and you're already touring.
So one of the questions I was going to ask, and I think you've both answered it, it was that we have a lot of people who, for one reason or the other, are going to go up country. But then maybe it's a conference, so they get there and they stay in their room the whole time because how do I begin? Who do I contact and say, well, so I'm in Gulu. Where do I begin? How do I see the rest of
You've
Gulu?
brought out something that is of high interest in me. Maybe just to take you back, I studied an MBA in tourism management in Thailand, and my thesis was about information. And that is the first thing. Once there's information, then people can access it. So probably those people who stay in their hotels is because they don't have that information. So it is our duty as people in the industry to put out that information as much as possible, including the media like we are doing right now.
So while we are waiting for you people in the industry to put out that information, myself included, I'm doing my part.
Sure.
How else can, so for example, I'm in Gulu right now, where do I go? How do I begin to look around?
A very good way to do it is everybody is on social media. One of the things that I do when I travel is I just put a post saying I'm coming to this area, what are the things to see?
Okay.
What are the things to do, you know? Or it's simple to Google or to find somebody who has been to the place that you're going and check out, and there are very nice websites like TripAdvisor that give you lists like 10 things to do, 10,
Okay.
you know, yeah, and then you can just find out for yourself. You don't need to wait for somebody to tell you. As long as you have the interest, it's just a matter of putting the word out there on social media, and everybody will chime in to
Okay.
give you examples.
I think social media is a very powerful tool. And initiatives like Ondava were started to convince Ugandans to actually go out there and share things that they feel are Ugandan about themselves and share on social media. We spend quite a bit of time on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and then when you share as much as possible, a lot of people become your friends. I did a walk to Jinja over 2 days, and I got 200 friend requests over those 2 days because of the
Wow.
things I was sharing. Now, a lot of people inbox me, where can I stay in Mbale? Where can I stay in Kisoro? Because of the amount of information I share. So if more people are sharing, we have a lot of information out there.
Okay. Well, one of the things you mentioned was how it's cheap, and so it takes me to one of the questions I wanted to ask. Is it love of the country that we are promoting local tourism, or is it because it's cheaper than, say, going to Dubai or Mombasa or one of these places? Why do you do what you do?
Well, personally, I've been lucky that I've also traveled to those countries and the cities especially. But I discovered one thing, is that everyone will tell you, Uganda is a very beautiful country. It's blessed. It's relaxing. When you go out there, I've traveled a lot. I used to be in marketing way back. I used to travel a lot. And up to today, I'm traveling, and I still discover new beautiful places in this country. And what is important is if people could focus on interacting with the nature, with the attractions, rather than looking at the cities.
Maybe nature is not my thing.
That is it. You know, there's even things called glamping. If you want to camp, but you don't want to get dirty and everything, there's a fancy way to do it. But that's not the only thing that you can do. You can check out different places that don't involve hiking and getting dirty and the nitty-gritty of it all.
Yes.
Yes, that's the
Mountain climbing is a very, very helpful
Yeah, I
way to
climbed
see
a
the
mountain.
country.
I climbed a mountain. I have a story to tell. Well, let's take a short break and we'll be right back. The conference center, Nairobi. Thank you for staying with us. So he told me why he travels. Why do you guys travel?
Well, for me, 10 years ago, I was involved with a farm that had a contract with Uganda Wildlife Authority. So we had to go and try and find a reason for each national park to stand on its own and promote itself. So it allowed me 30 days of being in the wild. I didn't have to check my phone. I didn't have to call people. The only people I was calling were people in the field who I needed. I saw so much beauty. I was in Kisoro, I was in Karamoja, I was like, how can I keep quiet after seeing all this? It was just, I had to share it. It was just there, the easiest thing to sell.
True.
That's why I do it.
Okay.
Well, for me, it started while I was quite young. My mom has an international job. So I was, for a long time, I'm the last of 3. So for a long time, I was her excess baggage everywhere she went.
Ouch, ouch.
So, so I got to see different things, and it just became part of my, should I say, my blood to want to keep seeing different places and discovering different things. And it grew into a passion that is easily accessible, because, as I said, you don't have to have money to travel. For example, I've come here from Bali, but I can say, let me see if there are any museums in Kampala, and I'll just walk to Uganda Museum, and I'll take a look at the history of Uganda, and that won't cost me much. I can decide to check out the nightlife in Uganda and in Kampala, and that's me being a tourist. I can decide I've never been to Mengo. Let me go to Mengo, and that's tourism.
Well, you've traveled quite a bit.
Yes.
Do you still travel out of the country as much as you used to?
Not as much as I used to,
Okay.
because I'm an entrepreneur now, so
Okay.
it takes a lot of
So,
time.
so for people like you that have been away and seen the beauty of Uganda and then come back, and you have all of these people abroad that are, you know, remain friends with you, how do we use that to promote our country to the people away?
That is a very good question. My very first clients were my friends who came to visit me, because when I would be traveling around, I would take a lot of pictures and I would post them on social media, and people would ask me, is that really in your country? Are you actually standing next to a waterfall? And I would say, this waterfall is 30 minutes from where I live, you know, or I'm standing on the balcony and I'm looking right at it, and they would say, you're joking, you know, how soon can we get there? Sure. And this is people far away, but also people close by. You know, my Kampala friends would say, next time you're traveling, please give me advance notification and I'll come with you, we'll share the costs.
Okay.
You know, and that's how it began.
Just to also talk about what she's saying about traveling. Like, in this country, many of us, when we were growing up, we used to travel a lot to the villages and so on. But because we didn't have that technology of photos and like today, today people travel a lot, and the difference between like the African countries and the other countries is that most attractions are along your journey.
Yes.
You understand? They're along the journey. So as you're traveling, you're actually touring. By the way, the tour is a bit different.
Yes.
Travel and tour is a bit different. But importantly, maybe most people are not aware that they are being tourists as they travel. So in most cases, maybe people miss out to shout the tourism part of it in their social media and so on. But like she said, you just move somewhere, you stop and take a photo, and that becomes an attraction.
Some of us, when we sit in the car, we want to sleep until our destination.
There are certain things actually Ugandans do, and you could classify that as tourism. We travel a lot for kwanjulas, kuhinjiras,
Yes.
weddings.
Okay.
Yes.
So if you traveled and then added a tour angle to it,
That's a cultural tourism.
it's something like that. It's actually under cultural tourism. So you travel, typically you travel the day before, and then you spend that night in that town. And then the next day you do your function, and then you travel. You've actually spent 2 days out of town, and you've gone to a restaurant, you've gone to a bar, you've gone to a church. I don't know what you do when you go out, but you've done those things, and the point where you spend money, you're impacting local communities in those areas.
Okay.
So we just expand a bit on our definition of what we think we are, and then we find out we're tourists.
So I think it'd be a good idea for everybody who organizes a Kwanjula or Kinjira out of town to also add a bonus of, and the following day we'll take you to see this and this place,
Thank
right?
you very much.
Yes,
That
is a good takeaway.
That's a good takeaway.
Yes,
Okay, so tell me about, I've heard about something called savings travel clubs. And I was engaging somebody on social media, Masheta Baker, and he was telling me about the Travel Maniacs Uganda, and they use savings travel clubs.
Yes, I have a friend who has something similar. Basically, I'll use my friend, what he does as an example. He uses social media, so he uses Facebook and WhatsApp, and he'll post a calendar and say we're going here on this date, we're going here on this date. So you can start sending the little that you have using mobile money. So he's very e-commerce, you know. So you just send a little bit of money, like let's say he has 4 dates and the latest date is maybe in August. So you start now. Every time you get a little bit of money, you forward it to him. You know, over the course, by the time you get there, you don't really feel the pinch of the
yes, so if I send about 50K and I'm trying to aim at 270,000, I can do that in what, 4 or 5 months?
Yes, sure. So typically what would happen is that with this group, Mountain Slayers, we're a bit rudimentary. So we'll get a brown envelope, not the ones, brown envelope, but we'll get a brown envelope and then we'll title it and say Kisoro or Karamoja. And then when you send money, you actually say what you're sending it for. And then your name is written there. And then the list has to get full. Also, knowing the number of people determines whether you use a Costa or a bus or a small car. So it all determines the cost of the trip.
Okay, so when I asked Baker, and he told me they try to tailor travel packages at unbeatable rates. And because in business terms, if you're not solving a problem, then you're not helping a thing. And I think that's what actually helps a lot of people who think that tourism is very expensive within the country. But then also your friend and you guys must be very trustworthy that we can send our money by mobile money. And
no, this group has been there for 4 years.
How do people find these kinds of groups? Because we have a lot of people that want to travel, but they don't know how to get in.
Information is your friend. Information is your friend. Technology is your friend.
We're going to social media again.
Yes.
and Google, because that's the prevailing means of communication. All these other communications are one-sided. Social media is interactive, you know. So even YouTube videos and things like that. So people put out specific travel YouTube videos. People blog. People write about their experiences when they go to certain places. There are specific websites like TripAdvisor, like Airbnb, for example, which offers home hospitality kind of stay. So if you want to travel somewhere and the hotels are really expensive, you can stay in somebody's house and pay a subsidized cost of your accommodation, which is usually the most expensive part when it comes to traveling to a new place. So the internet is your friend, is what I can say.
I'll also point out that in tourism, the best channel for information to flow is word of mouth. People tend to trust, like if I told you about Sabino, you'd trust because it's a one-on-one.
Yes.
Compared to if you just go and Google and so on. Yes, the Google will give you all the information.
I mean, he went, he survived it,
yes,
I can
yes.
go to it.
And there's a picture to show.
And
Yes.
there's all that to show. So it's the best way to disseminate information, one-on-one, word of mouth, they call it. And I have a very interesting story, but maybe I'll talk about it later.
No, you can't do that. Just tell the story.
It's more to do with the international, but also related with domestic. I discovered there, like the countries that tourism has grown, especially, I'll take an example of like France. France receives the highest number of tourists in the world. It's over 85 million per year. Uganda receives only 1.3.
Where are these figures from?
Well,
Google,
statistics.
From?
From Google.
I used, let me just chip in. I used to work in Pacific Asia Travel Association in Bangkok, so you would get those statistics. But of course, it's also updated. It's out there on the internet. And domestically, the citizens themselves, are also tourists in their country. It's hard to register the number of tourists because most of them are repeated tourists. So they register the amount of money. But you find that on average, countries like France, Thailand, for example, receives over 35 million visitors, international visitors per year. But they figured out that almost 60 million citizens are tourists in their own country. And the tourists, are the citizens are the best people to market the country. When you go to such a country, as soon as you enter the taxi from the airport, the taxi is telling you, after you check in the room and you're settled, can I pick you and take you for a body massage? Tomorrow, can I take you to this destination, floating back? So they're already marketing the country. By the time you settle in the room, you already know what to do, even if you had gone for something else.
Why are we not doing the same?
So that is the question here. Reason being that we as Ugandans are not involved in tourism. So it is hard for us to actually even market it. So until we get so involved and passionate about tourism, well, people complain about the whole expense, but I think it's also a cultural thing. We need to change that. We need to talk about
travel
it, to be
means
proud.
Taking up flights to somewhere.
Yeah, now that's the problem. People think
maybe
it's,
that's the cool-looking one.
Cool.
But if you keep waiting for the international tourists, many businesses will struggle. There are those lean months where you need a strong local content to be able to sustain a business. So if we have Ugandans traveling all year round, many businesses can survive, and then the international tourist comes as a bonus.
Okay.
And even in Malaysia, 85%, I think, Malaysians and the neighbors. And it's only 15% that come from the traditional UK, Australia, and whatever. So we need to really be involved in tourism as locals.
Is it worth it? What's been your greatest find about Uganda, Nabifo, in your travels around? Your greatest find?
I can't even begin to, because every time you think this is the best until you go somewhere else, you know.
So for now, before you find the next
for
best.
now, it's Fort Portal. I was in Fort Portal recently, and the air there is very different, you know. It's cool, it's clean, you feel like it's not polluted. That's when you realize, oh my God, when I'm in Kampala, the air is a little bit polluted, you know, and there's a lot of greenery with the tea trees, and the hospitality, everybody is friendly, it's clean. It's just a matter of asking somebody, how do I go to see, you know, the kingdom, where the kingdom is, how do I see this, how do I see that?
What are the people like?
Sorry?
The people.
The people, very friendly, in my experience, very friendly and very willing to help. Even the boda people, they'll tell you,
At no cost.
Sorry?
At no cost?
Well, of course. It's their business. It's the way of survival.
You know how everybody constantly says Ugandans are the friendliest people in the world, and what's been your experience as you move around?
In truth, I think Ugandans are really friendly, but we need to add a bit. We need to add knowledge, local knowledge about the places to go, such that when you're friendly
for a reason.
with a purpose. Can we make money from being friendly
Okay.
instead of just smiling? Yeah.
Okay. All right, well, let's take another short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back. We are coming to you from the Kampala Serena Conference Center Nile Room, and we're talking about local tourism. So one of my questions, and are you in a group, Nabifo?
Yes,
You're
the
also Eastern Entrepreneur and Tourism Network. Okay.
Yes.
Well, you're planning to, it looks like you're looking to take it out of, you know, regional. So one of the things that I think I constantly wonder about is are families included in these trips? Because I know that most people that go, and from the pictures that we saw, it's individuals. So it's, you know, me and my friends, and I know that a lot of times with these outings, there's of course going to be alcohol, there's going to be late nights, there's going to be. So what happens if I have, I want to go with my child, I want to go with my spouse, is it catered for?
Interestingly, spouses actually do. I'll talk about the group called Mountain Slayers. Spouses come, and then 3 times a year we organize. We call them kids. What slayers being kids slays, where you come, children are involved, spouses are involved, even the helps for the children are involved, and we don't want to talk about alcohol or no alcohol. I mean, be yourself. If someone drinks, let them drink. If someone likes to sit somewhere and read his Bible, then read the Bible.
That brings me to
inclusive.
the question of then safety. You know, because a lot of times people want to take a trip and they're thinking, is it safe? So if I'm going maybe abroad for a trip, I'm going to find out, do we have strikes happening in that country? Do we have a Tahrir Square situation happening? Then I'm not going to go. So if I'm thinking I want to go on a trip, I'm going to wonder, how safe is it? Are we going to Sipi Falls? And then there's alcohol. We've heard of stories of people drowning. We've had all kinds of stories. So it begs the question, safety.
Well,
insurance.
I'm looking at a wider perspective. For example, when we receive tourists, they usually have their travel insurance, and then the vehicles that we use in tourism are usually comprehensively insured.
Yeah.
So that covers a bit of it. But also remember, the destinations we're going to, the places we're going to, have management teams there. If you're going to camp, there has to be a camping area, there has to be the washrooms and so on, the facilities to ensure. In fact, some places we even have security guys there. The
First aid?
The tourism police.
Okay.
Yes, in those places.
Do we have first aid?
Always. Yes, the facilities have, even the travelers, like the vehicles tend to have. So with safety, it's relatively okay. It's just a matter of being responsible. Maybe when you bring in the alcohol bit, in most cases, like you talked about the children, I've given rentals to people with kids, families. And the children are always very excited about camping, by the way, more excited than the adults. And that is a good sign, because it means they'll grow up knowing that there's that. And the parents are usually worried about the cold, the comfort, and I keep reminding them that camping is not about comfort, it's about adventure, it's the experience.
Yeah, but like she mentioned earlier, there's something for the
glamping.
There's glamping.
So,
those who don't want to get dirty.
So like the several that have been where you have children, the parents tend to be very responsible. Just like at home, how you can have your alcohol, but the children don't access it, you behave. And then maybe when the children sleep early, that's when the adults do their adult things.
So what we are saying really, it's about responsibility, that when we are sitting at home and we are hearing on the news this person who fell in the water.
Yes, I think those are a little bit, people tend to get too excited for no good reason.
But I would like to say those are few and far in between
and
as well.
It's not only on these trips. People are excited and do silly things, are there everywhere.
Okay.
So
well, how about actually, you were saying something earlier about how these teams are organized, and when I was asking him about first aid, for example, either in Andaba or Mountain Slayers, do you have maybe a medical professional or somebody? Is there always somebody in the team that can help a situation?
that's a good question. With Mountain Slayers, we actually have doctors, we've got pharmacists, and then once we organized one of those trips, but we went to Mpanga Forest, and we're all taken through first aid training. The entire team was taken through first aid training. So we realized we're spending a lot of time in places near rocks, near water, near animals. So actually we were the first candidates for first aid training, and we took it seriously. And I think all of us have certificates. I hope we remember how to do many of the things.
There's one thing to have the paper.
Yes, there's one thing to have
Also,
the paper.
another thing is that most of these destinations where people go to, they have a reputation to uphold.
Yeah.
So safety definitely comes first, as well as most of these tour guides. They have a reputation to uphold. You don't want to be the tour guide who lost, a tourist when you're going on a tour. So everybody tries to do whatever it takes to make sure that safety comes first always.
What are the risks? I'm sure there are risks when you're planning this.
Always. When you're mountain climbing, for example, my group is always, the mountains are in such a way that you always think you're going to fall off on this side or the other. But you've got guides who are taking you through each of the processes. We are briefed. You've got to listen to the guides. They take you through all the steps, how to navigate through situations. But there's some things you cannot avoid. Like 3 weeks ago, someone was stung by wasps in Bwindi. And sadly they passed on, as there's nothing they could do about that. So it was just one of those things that happen. But it shouldn't scare anybody from from going camping. I focus much on camping because camping really brings down the cost of accommodation. If you said how much a tent?
200.
Well, renting it is like 25, 30,000.
So if you think of a room, brick and mortar of 20,000 shillings, 20,000, you'd worry about what kind of room that is. But the tent, it's within your realm of influence, and then you're camping about 50 people in one area with security, with amenities, and you're amongst friends. So there's a sense of
and camping is growing in this country. I, for example, well, I started off with few tents, and especially with mountain slayers.
But biggest.
Yes, every month. But eventually, it has grown because I've had companies doing retreats, the graphics and so on. We have cocktails in the wild. I think you've heard about it. They always come to me for tents. Recently, the Namasagali alumni, they had their retreat back in Namasagali. There's no accommodation there. It's deep. So I had to supply them with 150 tents. And they were happy.
Business is good.
Always.
Always is good. That's why they say this is for the rich people.
No,
And you refuse to answer my question.
I'm providing a solution.
What is the feeling when you travel around Uganda?
Well, you always want to get out of the concrete jungle. So whenever you go, it's refreshing, it's rejuvenating. You come back with a lot of energy.
Yes,
the beauty out there.
Yes, and also some of these adventure-related tourism, they give you a different perspective, you know. You're stuck in your office all day, every day. You have a specific routine. I wake up at this time, I go to the office, you know, and this gives you a break. So you come back refreshed, you know, and you have a different perspective. Like a while back, I went whitewater rafting, which many people would think is really dangerous, but I
can't swim.
Yes, and as you were talking about safety, before you even get on the raft, you're taken through a serious process, and you wear those vests that make you float. But once you see yourself overcoming that, there's a certain serenity that comes to you, and you believe whatever, you know, whatever you can do anything basically.
Okay. Well, our time is fast spent, so I'll ask you very quickly to close up your final remarks, and I'll start with you, Abba.
For me, I believe everybody should be a tourist, because the attractions we have in this country are God-given. It's a gift from God. So we should be able to enjoy them, interact with them. We shouldn't let the attractions be enjoyed by people coming from other countries. Let us be the first people to enjoy our tourism.
Okay, thank you very much, Abba. Habit?
I live for the day when there are 1,000 mountain slayer-like groups of 50 strong and more Ugandans, and they're crisscrossing the country. That would really show that local tourism has picked up tremendously. I live for that day.
Okay.
Well, with me, I would like there to be more education to the people to understand that tourism really is everybody's business, because everybody benefits from tourists. If a tourist comes to Kampala, they're going to use a mode of transport, so they're going to give some money. They're going to be hungry. They're going to go to a restaurant. They're going to pay. They're going to need some kind of snacks. They're going to go to a supermarket. They're going to want to sleep. They're going to go to a type of accommodation. They're going to want to go out. They're going to visit a bar, a restaurant, a theater. They're going to want some other type of entertainment. They're going to go to see the malls. They're going to, you know, look around. And everywhere that they're going, they're dropping some money, and it helps the economy. So I would like for all of us to participate and spread the word, especially where you come from or where you are, about the good things in that area, such that it can also be a big boost to our economy.
Well, did I say this was the last remark? So I have just one more question. At the drop of the hat, if I said, what can I go and see in Kampala? Because that's where we are right now. What's there to see in Kampala?
Nightlife.
The nightlife.
Kampala is well known for its nightlife. I think it has the best nightlife in
So
East
I should
Africa.
stay up late today.
It's an example of something you can do.
Okay, what else is there to see?
I like the religious tourism bit of it, because especially for Kampala, the mosques and the Catholic and Protestant churches are linked to the history and the formation of Uganda.
Yes, that is
By
true.
going to these churches and mosques, you actually get a rich history of your country, and you cannot sell something that you do not understand.
Okay, Abba.
Well, mine is also similar to his, but there's something I want to add on. Recently, I had visitors from the World Bank, and I was taking them around the city, and they were amazed at the traffic jam and the way borders, you know, sail through. Some of them wanted to jump onto
On a border,
for the thrill of it.
Yes, that is true.
But then I stopped because it's a bit also dangerous. So probably we have seen safe border in this town. Probably we should focus on those technologies.
Yeah, and border tours.
Yes.
Walter's border.
Yes.
Walter's border.
It's busy.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
well,
it's
in the
very-
conversation that we had with Amos and the other Nampindo, and one of the things that came up was the taxi parks.
Yes.
Yes.
That people stand there and wonder, how do these taxis make their way
Yes.
Yes.
out? So there's quite a lot to see.
I'd also
about.
like to pose a question. We say Nachivubo War Memorial.
Yeah.
Which war? Some history lesson there for Ugandans.
History lesson indeed. Well, our time is up. Thank you very much, all of you, for taking the time to join us.
Thank
and
you
I
for
hope
having us.
whoever is
Hosting
watching
us.
has picked a thing or two about local tourism, and that they'll take the time to go and find out what it is that there is to see about their country. Coming up is NTV Weekend Edition. Keep it NTV.